The only blemish on Khabib Nurmagomedov's legendary career is that he didn't fight long enough. After having a perfect record and being the most dominant fighter in history, no one could criticize him for the fights he had, but people do talk about the fights he never got to have. Today, we'll be looking at 3 potential opponents the UFC Hall of Famer wished he'd fought, and the 3 athletes he's looked up to. Starting with the 3 he wished he'd fought. First up, number 1, El Cucuy. When Nurmagomedov was asked to look back on his career and think of a name he wished he'd faced, everyone knew who he would name. That is El Cucuy, or Tony Ferguson. This was a fight every MMA fan on the planet wanted to see. People dubbed it the most important fight in UFC history. The two were scheduled to fight on many occasions. The super fight was canceled 5 times, out of which both Khabib and Tony pulled out twice, and the 5th time, the whole planet got shut down because of COVID. We all knew the winner of that fight would be considered the greatest lightweight of all time. Both fighters were riding a 12-fight win streak high, and it was clear that no one could beat either of them except the other. There was also some heat between the two after Nurmagomedov had to pull out because of a weight cut issue, and Tony started the tiramisu meme that he still uses to this day. Very rarely do we have a fight that generates this kind of interest from the audience. But unfortunately, after the fight was canceled for the 5th time, Tony lost to Justin Gaethje and hasn't won a fight since. Shortly thereafter, Nurmagomedov retired undefeated. And that was it for the cursed dream fight. Moving on, the next fighter on Khabib's list was Anthony Pettis. The reign of Showtime was very interesting, to say the least. Coming out of WEC after landing one of the best head kicks in MMA history, Pettis was looking like a world beater, and it wasn't very long before he got a shot against Benson Henderson, the guy he'd already beaten for the WEC lightweight belt. Pettis claimed gold, and the UFC thought they had the next big thing. His looks combined with his flashy fighting style made him a superstar. It was during his reign that Khabib was rising through the rankings, and everyone thought a fight between the two would eventually go down. After Khabib beat RDA, it looked like he'd be next for the title shot, but unfortunately, Khabib was injured and couldn't fight for 2 years. During that period, RDA beat Pettis for the belt in dominant fashion, and Showtime hasn't been a top contender since. It would have been interesting to see these two titans clash. Nurmagomedov thought the same. He wanted to face Pettis when he was holding the belt, but unfortunately the former champ couldn't stay around. Moreover, we'll look at Khabib's dream fight against GSP. The Eagle has mentioned multiple times that he's a huge GSP fan. The former 2-division champion was Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov's favorite fighter, and Khabib idolized him while he was growing up. In a recent interview, Khabib talked about GSP in front of a Canadian audience who have always been in support of their native fighter. Nurmagomedov said that GSP was a champion before he'd even started his professional career. He used to watch his fights, and his father told him to learn from George.
This guy was my father's favorite fighter. It's like I grew up watching his fights. It's honor stay with him here, and it's my pleasure, brother. My pleasure. How you feel now? You good shape now?
I feel fantastic, and man, listen to me. You're as close as a perfect fighter that anybody can be.
After Khabib captured the lightweight belt at UFC 223, he called out the Canadian icon for the very first time, and since then, it's been his dream fight. Everyone thought after Khabib beat Tony, he'd try to get to 30-0, and the only guy to challenge that record would have been GSP. And even though George had retired at that point, he admitted Khabib is the only guy he'd come out of retirement for. After Khabib announced his retirement, the UFC tried to pull a lot of strings to get these two to fight one more time on a giant card. George said that the UFC had an opportunity to book the fight a lot earlier, but they didn't want to do it back then. Right now, they're happily retired and have always shown a tremendous amount of respect toward each other. Khabib has gone on record saying that he believes GSP is the greatest of all time, and George thinks that Khabib is as perfect of a fighter as we've ever seen. It's nice to see these legends coexist. There's room for more than one at the top. On to our next segment, Khabib's 3 idols. First up, we have Khabib's obsession with soccer. The Dagestani fighter loves all sports. He has a black belt in judo, is considered to be one of the best wrestlers in MMA, won the World Sambo Championship twice, and is a former UFC champion. But despite all that, he still thinks that the greatest sport in the world is soccer. Nurmagomedov has always been a big fan of the sport. He grew up playing regularly and even got quite good at it. Khabib always shows great respect to soccer icons and puts them above himself as the best athletes, because that game was his first love. The Eagle flies to a lot of the big matches and loves watching the game at the stadium. He also loves meeting the players. There are videos on the internet in which Khabib can name every single Champions League winner over the last few decades. In a recent interview, Khabib was put through a rapid-fire round and had to choose between wrestling and soccer, and he easily picked the latter. So it's fair to say that he's a huge fan and loves the sport, and for that reason idolizes many legends that inspired him when he was young. But these players might not be who you expect them to be. Next up, we'll look at which soccer stars Khabib admired. Everyone thought Khabib would say Lionel Messi was his favorite. Most people think he's the greatest of all time with 7 Ballon d'Or wins, but Khabib is a Madrid fan and he's always been loyal to his team. On American Kickboxing Academy's YouTube channel, there was a clip of Khabib meeting a young kid who was wearing a Barcelona t-shirt, and he joked with the kid about not giving him an autograph until he'd say "A la Madrid." When asked about his childhood idols, he named Ronaldo Nazario and Zinedine Zidane. Both these legends played for Real Madrid and they inspired him a lot. Khabib is also a huge fan of the Portuguese megastar Cristiano Ronaldo. The two of them have become friends over the years, as Cristiano is a huge MMA fan as well. They both support each other before a big game, and whenever they meet, they exchange gifts. But loyalty to Madrid always comes first. When Ronaldo decided to leave his old team, Khabib respected his decision but said he'd still be a Madrid fan. Many culés might be disappointed to hear that, as this rivalry never ends, but the Eagle has made it clear that he's on that side. With that said, let's see what Khabib thinks about Islam's next fight. After retiring as a fighter, the Eagle took the role of Coach Khabib, and all the fighters under his wing have been performing super well. People say it's almost like a cheat code to have him in your corner. At UFC 280, several fighters from his camp competed, and they all got the W, but the biggest star of the night was Islam Makhachev, who fulfilled his father's plan by beating the people's champ, Charles Oliveira. When you're that dominant, it's hard to get people excited for your next fight. There's doubt that anyone at lightweight could challenge Makhachev, but that won't be a problem, as the pound-for-pound king and the UFC featherweight champ, Alex Volkanovski, has decided to move up a weight class to get that second belt. Volk has a winning streak of over 20 fights and is undefeated inside the octagon. He's also never lost at featherweight or lightweight, so Islam is definitely in for a tough night. Khabib said that he respects Volk greatly, and that's why they want to go to Australia and his hometown to fight him. The Eagle also believes that Alex might be Islam's toughest test. His fight IQ and heart are something to admire and could potentially give Islam a struggle. Volk also has some of the cleanest striking techniques in all of UFC. The Aussie fighter believes that size won't be an issue for him, and his takedown defense would be on point. It certainly would be interesting if he can keep the fight standing. It all goes down in February in Perth. That's a wrap for this video. Thanks for watching. Which one of the 3 fighters would you have loved to see Khabib face the most? And were you surprised by Nurmagomedov picking football over his own sport? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.